I never thought I'd be writing this, but I'm still trying to process what happened and whether I crossed a line. I, 24, female, just graduated law school, and my dad, 66, male, who's been divorced from my mom for 8 years, has been living out the most embarrassing midlife crisis ever. Sports cars, leather jackets, and dating women barely older than me. His latest girlfriend, Brittany, 22, female, is sweet but clearly has daddy issues. She calls him Daddy Bear in public and seems oblivious to how inappropriate the whole thing looks. My dad, he loves the attention and constantly posts cringy captions like, "Still got it," with pictures of the two of them. He's always been the kind of guy who jokes at others' expense and then tells you you're too sensitive if you don't laugh. Despite our rocky relationship, he said he'd help pay for my graduation party, which I planned with my mom. It was a big deal. 3 years of law school hell finally behind him. A small, classy event at the local country club with about 50 guests, friends, family, professors. A month before the party, my dad started acting cagey and kept teasing that he had a special surprise planned. I assumed it was a speech or something harmless. For the first hour of the party, he was shockingly well behaved. Brittany wore something way too youthful, but she was polite, and I almost let myself believe it would be a drama-free night. Then, just before I got up to give my thank you speech, he stood up, tapped his wine glass. I thought, okay, he's going to say something nice about me. Instead, he launched into a rambling monologue about love and seizing the moment and proposed to Brittany at my graduation party in front of professors, family, friends, and classmates. She said yes. People clapped awkwardly. I wanted to disappear. My dad beamed, saying this was his gift to make my party unforgettable. He genuinely thought he'd done something hilarious and clever. The mood was wrecked. My speech flopped. Guests left early. My professors were clearly uncomfortable. When I told my dad I felt humiliated, he laughed it off and said I needed a better sense of humor. Over the next few weeks, their engagement became the talk of the town. People made comments about the age gap or asked about my new stepmom. Worse, my dad started joking that his wedding would be more exciting than my graduation. That might have been the end of it, except I started noticing shady behavior. My dad would disappear for hours, get cryptic texts, and take phone calls outside. He's always been a flirt, but this was different. Sneaky. A friend from high school, Sarah, who bartends at a hotel, mentioned she'd seen him there with multiple women, none of whom were Brittany. I started monitoring his location through his apps. He's not tech savvy. And discovered frequent visits to hotels and restaurants around town during times he told Brittany he was working late. At first I didn't want to get involved, but the more I thought about how he hijacked my graduation and dismissed my feelings, the more I felt like he deserved some accountability. Then Brittany, who I'd assumed was just after his money, told me she'd taken out a loan to help pay for the wedding and honeymoon. That broke me. She wasn't just a clueless gold digger, she was genuinely invested. I knew she didn't deserve to marry someone who was deceiving multiple women. I started digging. I followed my dad one night and caught him with a woman in her 30s at a bar, holding hands, kissing, and then heading to a hotel. Over the next week I found out he was juggling at least 3 other women. Jessica, a real estate agent who thought they were exclusive, Amanda, a widow he met through a grief support group, and Lisa, a single mom whose son he'd met and bonded with. Each woman believed they were in a serious relationship with him. I collected evidence, photos, screenshots, and detailed timelines. I didn't know what to do at first. Confronting him wouldn't work. He'd just lie or laugh it off. Telling Brittany directly risked her not believing me. Then I had an idea. If he thought hijacking my graduation was hilarious, maybe he'd appreciate someone doing the same to his big day. The wedding was set at the same country club as my graduation. 150 guests, a flashy celebration. I contacted Jessica, Amanda, and Lisa separately, told them the truth, and showed them proof. I made it clear I wouldn't blame them if they wanted to stay out of it, but all three agreed to help. The plan was simple. During the toasts at the reception, I'd stand up and say I had a special surprise for my dad, just like he had for me. I'd introduce the women and they'd share their stories. The wedding day came. The ceremony went smoothly. Brittany looked radiant. I nearly backed out. But then my dad made another crack about how unforgettable my graduation had been thanks to him. That was it. During the reception, after the maid of honor and best man gave their speeches, I tapped my glass and asked for attention. I gave a short speech about how my dad had taught me so much about love and commitment, and how some special guests were here to share their experiences. Jessica went first, explaining she'd been dating my dad for 8 months and had met his friends and family. She described their relationship in detail. Then Amanda spoke about meeting him in a grief support group. She talked about how he'd presented himself as a widower, gained her trust, and started a serious relationship under false pretenses. Finally, Lisa described how he'd met her son, attended baseball games, and promised to move in with her. You could hear a pin drop. Brittany was frozen and then started crying. My dad's face turned purple. After they finished, I took the mic again. I looked straight at my dad and said, "I hope you enjoy this surprise as much as I enjoyed yours at my graduation." Then I sat down. Brittany ran out in tears. Her family followed. My dad erupted, calling me cruel, vindictive, and jealous. Jessica, Amanda, and Lisa left quietly. I'd arranged transport for them. The reception basically ended there. Some guests left in silence. Some stayed to watch the aftermath. My mom came over and, while shocked, admitted she wasn't surprised. She'd always suspected he'd cheated on her too. My dad's brother tried to calm things down, but there was no defending him. The stories were specific, the timeline irrefutable. My dad never denied any of it, just kept yelling that I'd ruined his happiness and overstepped. I told him, yes, it was revenge, but it was also justice. He hurt people. He lied. He never respected anyone else's moment, including mine. It's been 3 days. He hasn't spoken to me. Some family members support what I did. Others think I went too far. So, Reddit, was I justified or did I cross a line? Should I have handled it differently? AITA for ruining his wedding like he ruined my graduation? I genuinely don't know anymore. Update 1. The response to my original post has been overwhelming. Thank you to everyone who read and commented. It's helped me process what happened, though the fallout has been intense. First, yes, everything I wrote was true. I know it sounds like a soap opera, but unfortunately this was real life. Some asked for proof, and while I'm not sharing private media, I can say this. The story went viral locally. Someone at the wedding recorded the moment and posted it online. The local news picked it up with a headline. Names weren't used, but in our town of 30,000, everyone knew exactly who it was about. My dad owns a construction company, so this became the gossip story of the year. Since the wedding, it's been non-stop drama. Brittany called me the next day, still devastated but grateful. She admitted she'd had doubts about my dad, but dismissed them, thinking she was being paranoid. Now she's back with her parents, weighing whether to get the marriage annulled or go through with a divorce. She also connected with Jessica, Amanda, and Lisa, the three other women my dad was seeing, and they formed a kind of support group through this mess. Money-wise, Brittany's out about $8,000 plus a honeymoon loan. My dad is technically responsible for some of it, but she's unsure whether to pursue repayment or cut ties completely. My dad, predictably, is furious. He's been calling relatives, trying to paint me as mentally unstable and jealous. Unfortunately for him, all three women have receipts, texts, and photos proving their relationships with him. That hasn't stopped him from posting Facebook rants about toxic children and betrayal. Some of his old buddies are supporting him online, but most locals seem to know the truth. What's been worse, though, is that he's shown up at my apartment multiple times. I live near the law firm where I just started working, and he's parked outside waiting for me. He hasn't been physically threatening, but it's uncomfortable. Every attempt at conversation just turns into him yelling that I've ruined his life. My mom, surprisingly, has been incredibly supportive. She called me right after the wedding and said, while she was shocked by my approach, she was proud I stood up to him. She then told me things I'd never known. Apparently, during their marriage, women would contact her about my dad, but he always convinced her they were lying. She spent years second-guessing herself, wondering if she was just being paranoid. Hearing that validated a lot for me. Brittany and the others deserve the truth, just like my mom once did. At work, things have been more stable. One of the partners at my law firm knows my dad and pulled me aside to check if I was okay. He was professional about it, and I'm thankful my co-workers have been kind. Some had seen the video online, but no one thinks it's weird. It's been nice having at least one part of my life that isn't on fire. I've also started seeing a therapist who specializes in family trauma. She's helped me realize that my reaction wasn't just about the graduation party. It was years of my dad steamrolling others, prioritizing his ego over people's feelings. She's also encouraged me to think about boundaries and whether reconciliation with him is something I want. For now, I'm not ready. He still won't take accountability. One unexpected development: I was contacted by two other women who dated my dad years ago, Patricia and Rebecca. They saw the news and reached out. Patricia dated him shortly after his divorce. He told her he was looking to settle down, but she found out he was also seeing someone else. When she confronted him, he gaslit her into thinking she was overreacting. Rebecca had nearly the same story. Grand romantic gestures, big promises, lies about his age and job, then inconsistencies that made her dig deeper. Eventually she realized he'd been dishonest the whole time. Hearing from them confirmed what I already suspected. This wasn't just an isolated mistake, this was a pattern. My dad has a long history of manipulating women into trusting him only to betray them. Whether it's my mom, Brittany, Jessica, Amanda, Lisa, or now Patricia and Rebecca, the common denominator is the same. As for what's next, Brittany may pursue legal action to recover her financial losses, but she hasn't decided. Jessica, Amanda, and Lisa are doing their best to move on, but understandably feel betrayed and humiliated. I'm trying to focus on my career and stabilize my own life. The emotional toll of this has been heavy, and the local attention hasn't helped. Going to the grocery store, I still catch people staring. Some are curious, others judgmental, a few quietly supportive. I didn't want to be the center of a viral drama, but it's out there now. A lot of people asked if I regret what I did, and the honest answer: I don't regret exposing the truth. I do regret the pain it caused Brittany. who didn't deserve to be blindsided like that on her wedding day. I wish I could have protected her more privately, but I didn't see another way that would have worked. She wouldn't have believed me without witnesses, and my dad never would have told the truth himself. What I don't regret is setting a boundary and holding someone accountable who's never had to face consequences for the harm he causes. My dad humiliated me on my graduation day and laughed when I said it hurt. That moment solidified everything I already knew about his priorities. His wedding was just another show one that needed a reality check. So no, I'm not proud of how explosive it was, but I am proud that I finally stood up and said enough. Thanks again for all your support. I'll share more if anything else happens, but for now, I'm focusing on work, therapy, and moving forward. Update 2. Things have taken another dramatic turn, and I'm not sure if this is getting better or worse. Past few days have been insane, and I'm still processing it all. The good news is my dad finally stopped showing up at my apartment. I had been getting uncomfortable with him lurking around, and my co-workers had started noticing. I was considering a restraining order, but it turns out I did not need to. The reason is that he was arrested. I found out Tuesday morning when Brittany called me crying. She explained that my dad had been taken into custody the night before. Lisa, one of the women from the wedding, had been getting aggressive calls and texts from him since the event. He blamed her for ruining his life and demanded she admit she lied. She ignored him until Monday night, when he showed up drunk at her apartment while she was with her 8-year-old son. He pounded on her door, shouting that she had destroyed his reputation. She called the police, who found him intoxicated in his car. He was arrested for public intoxication, harassment, violating a restraining order Lisa had gotten that morning. This was actually his second violation in less than 24 hours. At the police station, I learned Jessica and Amanda had also filed restraining orders after receiving threatening messages from him. The 3 women had coordinated their legal response through an attorney Brittany connected them with. The officer told me my dad had been calling the station repeatedly, claiming he was the victim of a conspiracy orchestrated by his vindictive daughter. That afternoon, his lawyer called to ask if I would post bail. I refused and explained the background. The lawyer seemed surprised, saying my dad had given a different story. My dad spent 2 nights in jail before his brother, my Uncle Mike, bailed him out. Mike called me afterwards to ask what was going on. He had not heard any of this until my dad phoned him from jail. I told him the whole story. Mike was quiet, then admitted my dad had cheated on my mom throughout their marriage and the family had known. There had been multiple incidents over the years, but my dad always smoothed things over. They had hoped he would change after the divorce, but clearly he had not. Mike said he was proud I stood up to him and that the family had been enabling his behavior for too long. That conversation was validating. I had felt guilty about the public nature of his humiliation, but learning it had been an open secret for years and made me feel like I had done the right thing. On Wednesday evening, Brittany came over. She looked better but was still processing everything. She said she had been staying with her parents and seeing a counselor. She had been in regular contact with Jessica, Amanda, and Lisa. They were supporting each other. She found it oddly comforting to know she was not the only one my dad had deceived. Then she told me something new. While reviewing financial paperwork for the annulment, she found documents showing my dad had lied about his finances. He owes large sums in back taxes, unpaid loans, credit card debt. He had been using their relationship to help cover expenses and had even opened a credit card in her name without her knowledge. She had contacted a lawyer about the fraud and planned to file a police report. It explained a lot. His construction business had been struggling, but he kept up a flashy lifestyle through deception and fraud. The wedding drama was only a fraction of his problems. On Thursday, I spoke to a lawyer myself to make sure none of this could affect me. She assured me I was not liable for his debts, but advised me to document everything and consider a restraining order if he kept harassing me. I have been saving screenshots of his social media posts and voicemails. His Facebook posts have become more erratic since the arrest. He writes long rants about being persecuted, and most friends have stopped engaging. Some people have told me that they are concerned about his mental state. Local paper ran a follow-up about his arrest, and while most comments supported the women, a few criticized me for going public. I have received unexpected support. Several law school classmates reached out after seeing the news, sharing their own stories about difficult family situations. My co-workers have also been great. My supervising attorney told me the firm was aware of the situation and that it would not affect my job. He also said many attorneys have dealt with challenging family matters. At this point, I feel more confident that I made the right choice, even though the fallout has been worse than I expected. My dad's arrest and the revelations about his financial fraud show his issues go far beyond cheating. I still feel bad about the pain Brittany and the others went through, but I am glad the truth came out before things got worse. His anger towards me is not about the wedding. It is about facing consequences for the first time. I plan to keep going to therapy and focusing on my career. Those are my only priorities right now. Update 3. I honestly didn't think this story could get any crazier, but the past few days have been absolutely wild. I'm writing this update from my mom's house because I decided I needed to get away from my apartment for a while after everything that's happened. Let me start with the court proceedings. My dad had this preliminary hearing on Friday for the harassment charges and restraining order violations. I didn't attend, but Brittany was there to support Lisa, Jessica, and Amanda, and she filled me in on what happened afterwards. According to Brittany, my dad showed up to court looking disheveled and apparently hadn't hired a proper attorney. He was still being represented by the same lawyer who'd called me about bail. But this guy clearly specializes in business law, not criminal defense. The lawyer looked completely out of his depth during the proceedings. The judge was not impressed with my dad's behavior. Apparently, my dad tried to interrupt the proceedings multiple times to explain that he was the real victim in this situation. The judge had to threaten him with contempt of court to get him to stay quiet. All 3 restraining orders were extended for 1 year. My dad was ordered to complete anger management counseling as a condition of his release. He was also ordered to pay restitution for the counseling costs that Lisa, Jessica, and Amanda had incurred as a result of his harassment. But the really shocking news came on Saturday morning when I got a call from Uncle Mike. He told me that my dad had been arrested again, this time by federal agents for tax evasion and wire fraud related to his business. Apparently, the investigation into my dad's finances that started with Brittany's identity theft complaint had uncovered much more serious crimes. According to Uncle Mike, my dad had been running some kind of elaborate scheme where he was billing clients for construction work that was never completed, using fake invoices and forged documents to hide the fraud. The federal charges are much more serious than the local harassment charges. My dad is looking at potentially years in federal prison if he's convicted. Uncle Mike said the family is in shock because none of us had any idea how deep my dad's criminal behavior went. I spent most of Saturday trying to process this information and wondering if I somehow should have seen this coming. Looking back, There were signs that my dad's business was struggling and he was having money problems. But I never imagined he was committing federal crimes to cover it up. On Sunday, I got an unexpected visitor at my apartment. It was my dad's business partner, Tom, who I'd met a few times over the years but didn't know very well. Tom looked terrible and seemed really shaken up about everything that had happened. Tom told me that he'd been cooperating with the federal investigation because he discovered some of my dad's fraudulent activities and had been trying to figure out how to handle the situation. He said he'd been considering going to the authorities himself when my dad's arrest forced the issue into the open. According to Tom, my dad had been forging Tom's signature on contracts and using Tom's reputation in the community to gain clients' trust. Some of the victims of my dad's fraud were people Tom had known for years, including elderly clients who trusted my dad with their life savings for home renovations that were never completed. Tom was clearly feeling guilty about not catching my dad's behavior sooner, and he wanted to apologize to me on behalf of the business. He also warned me that some of the fraud victims might try to contact me, looking for information or seeking restitution, since my dad had apparently mentioned me and my law degree to some clients as a way of building credibility. This conversation with Tom was really disturbing because it showed me just how manipulative my dad had been. He'd been using his family relationships, his business partnerships, and his romantic relationships as tools to deceive people and steal their money. On Monday morning, I decided I needed legal representation of my own. Even though I hadn't done anything wrong, I was worried that my dad might try to implicate me in his business dealings somehow, especially since he'd been claiming I was part of a conspiracy against him. The criminal defense attorney I consulted was very thorough and asked me detailed questions about my relationship with my dad and any knowledge I might have had about his business activities. After reviewing everything, she assured me that I wasn't at risk of being charged with anything, but she recommended that I be prepared to testify if the case goes to trial. She also advised me to be very careful about any contact with my dad going forward, since anything I said to him could potentially be used in his criminal case. This was hard to hear because part of me had been hoping we might eventually be able to repair our relationship, but I realized that ship had probably sailed. The media coverage of my dad's federal arrest has been intense. The local newspaper ran a front-page story with the headline, "Local Contractor Charged in Multi-Million-Dollar Fraud Scheme." They included details about the wedding incident as background information, which meant my part in exposing my dad's behavior got mentioned again. I've been getting calls from reporters asking for interviews, but my attorney advised me not to talk to media until after my dad's criminal case is resolved. It's been strange seeing my family's drama become such a public spectacle, but I'm trying to focus on the fact that my dad's victims deserve to have their stories heard. Brittany has been amazing through all of this. She's been checking on me regularly and has become a real friend despite the bizarre circumstances that brought us together. She told me that she's been in contact with some of my dad's fraud victims. She's been helping them connect with resources for recovering their stolen money. Brittany also told me that she's decided to go back to school to finish her nursing degree. She said that everything that's happened has made her realize how important it is to be financially independent and not rely on someone else for security. I'm really proud of her for turning this awful experience into motivation for building a better future. Jessica, Amanda, and Lisa have all been doing well considering everything they've been through. They've formed a really strong support network for each other. They've been helping other women who've come forward with similar stories about my dad. Turns out there were several other women he'd been involved with over the years who just hadn't spoken up before. As for my relationship with the rest of my family, it's been complicated. Uncle Mike and a few other relatives have been supportive, have acknowledged that my dad's behavior was inexcusable. But some family members think I went too far by exposing everything so publicly. And they blame me for the family's embarrassment. My mom has been incredible throughout this whole ordeal. She's been my biggest supporter and has helped me understand that I'm not responsible for my dad's choices or their consequences. She also shared some more stories about his behavior during their marriage that helped me realize this pattern of deception and manipulation goes back decades. The hardest part of all this has been accepting that my father is not the person I thought he was. Even though we had our problems, I'd always believed he was basically a good person who just had some character flaws. Learning about the extent of his criminal behavior has forced me to completely reevaluate our entire relationship. My therapist has been helping me work through these feelings of betrayal and disappointment. She's helped me understand that my decision to expose my dad at his wedding wasn't just about revenge, it was about finally standing up to years of manipulation and emotional abuse that I've been minimizing or excusing. Looking ahead, I'm trying to focus on building my own life and career separate from all this family drama. My job at the law firm has been going well, and my colleagues have been incredibly understanding about everything I've been dealing with. I've also been thinking about ways I might be able to help my dad's fraud victims, potentially by doing some pro bono legal work or connecting them with resources for recovery. It feels like a way to turn this whole awful situation into something positive. As for my dad, he's currently being held without bail because the judge determined he was a flight risk. His new attorney is apparently trying to negotiate some kind of plea deal, but given the extent of the charges against him, he's likely looking at significant prison time. I don't know if I'll ever have a relationship with my dad again, and honestly, I'm not sure I want one. The person I thought was my father was largely a fiction, and the real person behind that facade is someone who was willing to hurt anyone to get what he wanted. But I'm oddly grateful for everything that's happened, as painful as it's been. If my dad hadn't hijacked my graduation party with his proposal, I might never have been motivated to investigate his behavior. Brittany, Jessica, Amanda, Lisa, all his other victims might have continued being deceived and harmed. His business fraud might have continued until even more people were hurt. Sometimes doing the right thing means accepting that there will be consequences you didn't expect and can't control. I may have started this whole thing as revenge for my ruined graduation party, but it turned into something much bigger. Finally holding my father accountable for decades of selfish, harmful behavior. I'm not sure if there will be more updates to this story. My dad's criminal case will probably take months or even years to fully resolve. I'm hoping to rebuild some privacy and normalcy in my life, but I wanted to share this final update because so many people have been following along and offering support. To anyone dealing with a manipulative or abusive family member, trust your instincts, set boundaries, and don't let anyone convince you that keeping the peace is more important than protecting yourself and others from harm. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's destructive behavior, even if they're family. Thanks to everyone who's been reading and commenting on this story. Your support has meant more to me than you know during one of the most difficult periods of my life. Stay tuned for more stories from Our Girl Relationships.